Should billionaires be allowed to exist? This was something Dave Ramsey was recently asked on his radio show after he was sent a New York Times article about abolishing billionaires. The article stated that billionaires are bad, we should get rid of all billionaires, all of them. $1 billion is more than anybody needs, even accounting for life's most excessive luxuries. At some level of extreme wealth, money inevitably corrupts. Well, Dave took that and he responded that there's a large part of the population that think having money is bad. If you're wealthy, then you're evil. If you get money, then you're a bad person and you should have it all taken away from you and given to somebody else. Well, he says that those kinds of statements are straight up Marxism. But if we give it to somebody else, what does that make them? Bad too? So, in today's video, we're going to talk about these groups, these rich people, these poor people, who's a rich person, who's a poor person, and the differences between the two groups. If you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Jeff Anzalone, a Louisiana periodontist that wants to teach you how to exit the rat race by building passive income streams. You can download my free quick start passive income guide with the link below this video. Let's get into it. First, let's start off with defining who exactly is rich. Well, in America today, being rich means you have or are associated with money. Typically, these people invest in assets such as stocks, bonds, real estate, crypto, and or have a high income. If you've read The Millionaire Next Door, then you know that rich people don't necessarily appear rich. There was a poll that CNBC gave out to try to determine the criteria of what it was to be rich. And they found two things. First, you must have a net worth of at least $2.3 million. Second, you have to earn at least $300,000 a year. Well, my definition of a rich person is somebody basically that has enough money to live off of assets that pay or produce passive income, whether they're working or not. The rich focus on accumulating assets that provide these extra streams of income for freedom, whereas most people do what? They focus on buying crap to make them look good. Also, in the book, The Millionaire Next Door, the authors used net worth. That was their measure of wealth. They looked at somebody's net worth. And this is calculated by basically taking your assets, subtracting the liabilities, and this gives you their net worth. All right, that's the rich people. So let's talk about who's poor people. Well, when you think of somebody that's poor, who comes to mind? Is it a homeless person, somebody living on the streets? Well, for our purposes today, that's not what we're talking about. My definition of a poor person can be somebody that's anywhere from unemployed to the physician making $400,000 a year or more. Now, I know you're probably asking yourself, well, Jeff, how could this be? It doesn't matter your income because if you spend more than you make living paycheck to paycheck with no assets coming in, guess what? You're poor. So now we know the difference, the definitions between rich person and poor person. Let's take a look at the 7 key differences between the two. And in the first one, we get it from a very likely source, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that is this: the rich get their money to work for them. Now, one of the biggest differences between the rich and the poor, it has to do with how they make their money. How they make their money. The rich understand that wealth can't be built if you're in a position where you have to go out and, for me, I've got to trade time. I have to treat patients. I have to trade time for money. There's no way with that model that you can build real wealth. Even though Think about it. Even though everybody has the same allotted hours a day, the rich know how to maximize those hours. Most of these people have an average of 7 streams of income, where the poor only have, you guessed it, 1. When I started this practice, it never crossed my mind that I'll always be in a position where I'm trading time for money. Because if I'm not here, working on a patient, working on teeth, then guess what? If I stuck with that model, then no money would come through the door. Even worse, it really didn't matter how big I were to grow this practice. Again, I was still relying on the earned or active income. If you don't realize this by now, you should know this is a very risky way to live, and I'm very glad that I recognized this early enough to do something about it. That's number one. Number two is this: the rich focus on earnings, whereas the poor always focus on saving. Even though the rich are still good at saving money, they understand that there's a limit to how much you can save, but there's no limit to how much you can earn. This has to do with something called having an abundant mindset. The rich believe that money is infinite. Money is infinite, where poor people what? They feel that it's scarce. Rich people constantly focus on learning ways to create wealth, like starting new businesses. They're operating from abundance, where poor people operate based on fear. The rich aren't afraid to take calculated risks because they know if they lose it, if they have it all taken away from them, guess what? They can make it back. Poor people are more concerned with the modest gains that their 401k investment is going to get them, and instead of using their minds to create wealth. Number three, rich people focus on opportunities, and poor people do everything they can to avoid risk. There's a big difference in how the rich make financial decisions compared to the poor. The key difference is this: rich people use logic and weigh out, they look at the pros and cons on these decisions, on these different situations before they make a decision. They gain confidence with their decision by taking calculated action as they've performed already the necessary background work. These steps give them a better chance of having a what? A higher payoff potential. On the other hand, poor people tend to make financial decisions, guess what? Very impulsively. They do this, they make impulse decisions without thinking through, they don't think through their choices. For example, what do most people focus on? The majority of the people, when they go buy a new car, what do they focus on? What is their main concern? How much is going to cost them each month, right? They never think that learning about how much interest this is going to cost them in the long run, because again, what? They're impulse buyers. That's the poor person. Fourth main difference between the rich person and poor person: rich people, they're constantly learning. They're avid readers. They're constantly learning. Whereas poor people do what? They quit learning after school. I can't tell you how many of my dental school classmates told me our senior year, "Hey Jeff, I can't wait till I graduate. I'm never going to pick up another book again." Poor people, even dentists, stop learning once they finish with school. Now, I don't care how educated you are, if you think like this, if you have this mentality, good luck getting wealthy. Just like a business. If you're not growing, then guess what? You're dying. Without continued education, continued learning, there's nothing to compound on. Billionaires such as Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, they understand this concept, which is why they're avid readers. Buffett reads 5 or more hours a day. Musk read 2 books a day growing up, and Gates reads 50 books a year. Because I've always been interested in learning about personal finance, reading every day eventually allowed me to stumble upon how to create passive income, which then led me into real estate. Now, if I'd stopped learning right out of dental school, guess what? I'd be working until I'm 75 or 80, just like most dentists do. Fifth difference: rich people set goals and they have a vision, whereas poor people don't. The first question that I ask new Passive Investor Circles members is, hey, what goal or what goals are you trying to accomplish? Rich people are aware of where they're starting from, where they want to go, and then guess what? They develop a plan of action. This plan allows them to create a crystal clear vision of what they're trying to achieve. So if somebody's thinking, hey, I want financial freedom, well, they're going to have, that's their vision. And then they start creating goals to help them with that. Moving forward, once they start down this path, they can start to get rid of all the naysayers, all the negative people in their life that are constantly trying to what? Constantly trying to pull them down and avoid activities that basically waste their time. Research shows that over 80% of rich people focus on accomplishing a single goal at a time. They write it down and then they place it somewhere that's highly visible, that they're always looking at it every day. Whereas only 12% of poor people write down any goals. Number 6, rich people, they avoid complaining and they're always searching for solutions. On the other hand, poor people always find excuses, and guess what? They give up. There's a reason why only 1% of the population is rich versus 99% that aren't. The rich understand that to become a 1%er, it isn't easy, and they know that along the way there'll be many failures, there'll be many roadblocks. Now, when I first started investing in real estate, one of my biggest failures thus far cost me 50 grand. Now, I started to dabble on some of these crowdfunding websites, got burned, but guess what? I didn't give up. The good news is that I took what I had learned, I learned from those mistakes, and now have not only found success with investing in real estate, but I've also been given the chance to teach others like you about some of the mistakes to avoid via my personal experience. Poor people view building wealth as something that's just too hard to do. They allow negative people to stay within their circle who constantly keep them down. These are the type of people who have always given up or they've never tried. They subscribe to something called the crab mentality. This is where you have a bucket full of crabs and you have one of them that's trying to crawl and get out. And guess what? They reach up to that crab and they pull him down. Instead of, if they all work together, then escape would be much easier. Again, instead, they hinder each other's progress. Guess what? If they can't succeed, they see a crab trying to crawl up, get out of the bucket, they bring them down. So if they can't succeed, neither can you. Last but not least, number 7, rich people seek out mentors, whereas poor people don't. Successful people understand that life is about connections and they make it a point to connect with others to actually broaden their circle. Remember that they have goals and a vision and seek out those that they admire most to learn from them. Now, when the pandemic caused people to stay indoors, it really didn't take me long to realize that I really missed that connection. I miss connecting with other people because life is all about relationships. That's what we were made for. That's what we're geared for. And the rich spend time with other wealthy people. And the more that you hang around people like this, the quicker that you're going to realize what their work ethic is about and their successful habits. You want to seek out those that you admire and inspire you. Then you just make it a point to learn from them. And if you're really ready to learn the exact steps it takes to become rich, then check out this next video where I'm going to talk about the 5 steps to becoming a millionaire. See you over here.